Welcome back to the Grease Goblins Reread channel. Today's video, we're going to be covering Tyrion III, Clash of Kings, or part 2 of the Battle of the Blackwater. In the last part, we talked about Davos' side of things and really the wildfire trap going off, and now we're going to be seeing it from Tyrion's eyes and really seeing how he tries to defend the castle. Things are seemingly going well, given we were in Davos' point of view and how the fleet was massively destroyed, but we're going to see that it's not going perfectly well with Tyrion's side of things either. But I will say this, I had talked about possibly in last week's video combining 2 chapters for today's video, and I want to be very transparent with you guys. I did consider it, and given that this chapter and next week's chapter are relatively short, I have thought about it, but the thing is, as I've been planning out my content for the rest of the year, and for you guys that especially follow me on multiple channels know, I'm going to be uploading a ton, and just planning how everything I'm going to have to be doing for the rest of the year, and also trying to give myself, a week off in terms of not having to record or edit and everything already being scheduled around Christmas time. I just kind of looked at it and went, yeah, this is not really feasible. I just need to do what I can do. I have about 30 videos I need to record within the next 2 to 3 weeks between 3 different channels, as well as editing them for the rest of the year, of course. So we're going to have a small reread chapter. Sorry for people that were maybe wanting more. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get into page 630. Tyrion crouches motionless atop the city wall, perched like a gargoyle over the mud gate. Below him, the Blackwater River blazes a green inferno. Half of Stannis' fleet and most of Joffrey's are engulfed in wildfire. We see Tyrion seeing what basically is happening to Davos and the trap that's been sprung, the chaos that's encircled the battlefield. And really this opening page for Tyrion is about looking at the battle. And I think it's really interesting the way that George A. sets up the scene of what everything is looking like, because this isn't a TV show. It's not like in the TV show where we can look and go, oh, yeah, obviously this is what's happening with the Battle of the Blackwater. Davos' chapter makes it clear that, wildfire is going off and the chain has been raised, but you don't really get that full, wide shot picture of what's happening across the battlefield. So a great establishing intro for George to start out the chapter. Tyrion notes that the green flames consume ships and men alike, turning war galleys into pyres and sailors into living torches. The air is thick with smoke, arrows, and screams, the sky tinted an eerie jade glow from the burning river. Everything Tyrion is thinking about here is just painting the horror of this war, and it's something that Tyrion's going to think about a lot heavily, and the open to this chapter is this was all necessary in Tyrion's mind because Stannis was attacking the city, they had less men, they had worse quality of men, they had the worst position in every regard, and so Tyrion had to do some very drastic things to try and equal it out. And what that's done is created just a horror below him. And Tyrion's kind of thinking about that, trying to put himself in the shoes of somebody down there on one of these ships or fighting on the beaches. This is just horrible. It is just horror, just in general. Downstream, small craft, rafts, ferries, carracks struggle helplessly as the current carries the wildfire towards them. You can't really get away from it either because the wildfire just travels too quickly and it consumes all. The Mirish galleys fight desperately to turn, their white oars flashing like frantic centipede legs, but they have nowhere to flee as they are also consumed. Along the city's base, barrels of pitch explode, sending up dozens of orange fires, but they are dwarfed by the wildfire's fury. And that's another thing, is that the wildfire and why it's so dangerous, why Tyrion took so many precautions in terms of, actually using the wildfire against their enemy is, let's say even one of these wildfire had just exploded inside of the castle walls. That could have had a chain reaction leading to more wildfire going off, leading to just their pitch, anything around just catching on fire. And so that's why Tyrion was so strategic in how he wanted to use that wildfire. And he has a great plan of it, especially given what it's doing outside of the walls. The low clouds reflect the flames, painting the heavens shades of green, a terrible, mesmerizing beauty that reminds Tyrion of Dragonfire. And one thing that's really interesting about this paragraph, and especially this chapter, is a lot of people compare this to why Tyrion might be a Targaryen, because not only does he have a lot of things that you might go, oh, well, the Targaryens had struggles with incest, and so they would have a lot of these physical disabilities that Tyrion is going to have, him being shorter, and also him having the mismatched eyes and his hair color. A lot of that could maybe symbolize if Aerys was the actual father of Tyrion, Here it also kind of adds up, just given the fact that you have Tyrion kind of being reminded of Dragonfire, and he's thinking about Aegon the Conqueror and wondering if he felt the same in awe when he unleashed his dragons at the Field of Fire. But this isn't to mean that Tyrion feels like, oh, this is this big triumphant moment where he feels happy for everything he's done. It's more like Tyrion has seen his trap through, and he's, in one hand, he's happy because it was successful, and he knows that this trap needs to work for them to survive. But as the page goes on, he contemplates on this for a little while, and he thinks about his own actions and what it's caused. But Tyrion can't look away. The heat beats against his face, whipping his crimson cloak in the furnace wind, but still he can't look away. Below, the gold cloaks cheer from their stations, but Tyrion feels no real triumph. He thinks it's only half a victory. He realizes grimly that it will not be enough. And the other thing you're thinking about if you're Tyrion, in terms of what's happening, is you're realizing the chaos, the amount of human life that's being wasted because of this battle. And Tyrion's going to throw a lot of that blame on Stannis, of course, because Stannis is the one trying to take the castle, and Tyrion has to save the castle. He's been charged to do that by his father, and this is his family, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's one, Tyrion realizing that this is not a victory. This is only slowing Stannis down for the moment. Tyrion still has to hold the city. He's still going to have to overcome incredible odds. And also that loss of life, the horror that's really surrounding the entire Battle of the Blackwater. As we get into page 631, Tyrion watches as another wildfire-laden hulk explodes, the blast sending a fountain of burning jade skyward. Flames 30 to 40 feet high dance on the river, drowning out the screams for a few brief moments. This is, in my opinion, what the TV show really took inspiration from, because in the TV show, one of the prettiest shots in the entire show, in my opinion, is when the wildfire trap does go off, and you see it from Tyrion's point of view, and you just see this green flame reaching like into the clouds. This is where that shot came from, in my opinion, and it's beautifully described by George. It's horrifying because you're thinking about this fire that is much hotter than your normal fire. It consumes everything. You think about how huge that explosion is. It's just showing you the sheer amount of death that's happening during the battle. Hundreds of men burn or drown in the water, some both at once. And Tyrion thinks bitterly, do you hear them, Stannis? Do you see them burning? This is your work as much as mine. And Tyrion is right to say this. Like, yes, Tyrion is responsible for the trap, but Stannis is also the one trying to take the throne. He's trying to invade a city and a castle, and we know why he's doing that. Stannis is the rightful heir at this point. He is the person that should be on the throne. But it's a tough situation that I love that George places us in, because we understand Tyrion completely. We understand Davos and Stannis' side completely. And I also love the symbolism that George is using for Stannis. Stannis, the one thing, and I talked about this a lot in the last chapter, the one thing that he's been built on his campaign is R'hllor. And, fire especially has been really important to Stannis' campaign in terms of symbolism. And you see this here, and it's like the big undoing for Stannis is wildfire. It is fire being used against him. And now you can say, well, Melisandre isn't with Stannis, so it's almost like him losing the fire. Now that's turned against him. There's so much like subtlety to the way that George writes the Battle of the Blackwater that I really love. Because even think about the way the battle is going to end with like Renly's ghost being the thing that defeats Stannis. It's just so perfectly written in terms of what George was trying to do with not only just it being a spectacle and a great battle, but the subtle writing points that reflect the characters involved. Tyrion knows that Stannis is surely watching from the south bank, likely commanding from the rear on horseback, crowned in red gold shaped like flames. Nearby, Joffrey cries out from behind the ramparts, voice cracking as he points at his burning ships, the Kingslander, the Loyal Man, and the Seaflower. And like I said, Joffrey is very much playing at war. He doesn't understand that these are human lives that are being destroyed, not just a ship. A ship can be rebuilt. Men cannot. When men die, they die. At least in the real world, we assume. I mean, in terms of A Song of Ice and Fire, that's not exactly true at all. We've seen people be resurrected, but in terms of the average guy in A Song of Ice and Fire, you're dead. And Joffrey doesn't understand that, and Joffrey's not also realizing how dire the situation is. Like, he had to have lost ships for this plan to have worked, and Tyrion's going to think about that as well. Tyrion knows the Seaflower is doomed, her golden hull licked by green fire despite her captain's effort to turn upriver. He explains coldly to Joffrey, it could not be helped. Our fleet was doomed in any case. And Tyrion's right. In a straight naval battle, the Lannister fleet would have been defeated, but here at least they were used in a better way to draw in all of Stannis' fleet and try to destroy as much of that fleet as humanly possible. From atop his Merlon perch, Tyrion can't see under the castle, but he knows exactly what's happening. He's envisioned it 1,000 times. Bronn would have whipped the oxen into motion the moment Stannis' flagship passed beneath the Red Keep. Slowly the great iron chain would begin to rise, link by dripping link, creaking and grinding from the depths. By the time it surfaced, the usurper's fleet was trapped. Stannis rowed his fleet up the Blackwater, but he will not row out again. And Tyrion even makes a note that nobody would have seen it. It was a great plan. We even know this is not exactly true. It's not as flawless as Tyrion thinks it is, because the reason it works so well is because of, for one, the leadership that Stannis has in terms of who's in control of the naval fleet, them not taking precautions whatsoever and just running headfirst into Joffrey's fleet. And Davos, even in the split amount of time that he's able to think about what's going on with these towers and the chain, he's able to figure out that, yeah, there's a chain in the bay. He knows it's there. He just doesn't know its purpose. So Tyrion's plan is flawless. Don't get me wrong. It works perfectly because of the circumstance going on. But still, Tyrion knows it's not necessarily enough, as there's still a lot of flaws that's going on in his plan. The wildfire didn't spread as evenly as he would have liked. It didn't really cover the whole battlefield. It covered certain parts of it a lot more than others. And Tyrion notes that some mirror ships hug the south bank, escaping the worst of it. At least 8 enemy ships have managed to reach the city walls, landing or wrecking. Either way, they've put men ashore. And that's the danger for Tyrion, is because once men start getting ashore and assaulting the castle, your morale goes down as the minute goes by, as the ramming continues. Men start to think, is the battle lost? Should we desert? That's everything going through their minds, and that's also what Tyrion realizes as well. As we get into page 632, Tyrion realizes that a portion of Stannis' south wing ships escaped the wildfire, leaving him 30 to 40 galleys still battle ready. And that's too many, because if there is still this many ships left, there's nothing stopping Stannis' fleet from getting the rest of their forces to the gates. There's nothing stopping them anymore. They now have won the bay. Even though they've taken tremendous losses, it still won't matter in the general scheme of things, because Stannis still will be able to get his men ferried. But Tyrion does know they will rally at some point. They still are winning the battle. Tyrion recalls Halland's warning that wildfire burns so hot and melted flesh like tallow. He knows his own troops might break if things turn grim. Bywater's advice echoes in his mind: keep the battle sweet from start to finish. Now, it's ironic, given this is a battle and it's probably one of the most brutal of the entire series. How do you do that if you're Tyrion? You have far less numbers. You have every military disadvantage outside of being in the defensive position. Tyrion has tried to even the odds, and even he knows it's not enough. How does he do that? And that's what Tyrion's realizing. It's once they assault the gates, if he gives his men time to think about what's happening, the battle could be lost already. From atop the walls, Tyrion spots enemy soldiers moving into the ruins of the wharfs. He decides it's time for another sortie, attacking the enemy before they can form ranks on the north bank. He orders a runner to tell Lord Jacqueline Bywater that enemy troops have landed on the riverfront, and another message is sent to Sir Arnold telling him to angle the trebuchets 30 degrees west for better range. Now, there's a lot to kind of decipher here. One, we've talked about this already through Davos's POV, but the most vulnerable time that men are going to have assaulting this castle once they start landing is that initial point. Think about history, for instance. For me, when I think about this chapter, I think of World War II, the Allied forces landing back in Europe, and the terrible conditions that many of them found when they got to the beaches with the German defenses, all that kind of stuff. It would be similar to that here. Now, it's not the same because, of course, technology got better. You have machine guns, things like that just can take human life just exceedingly quickly. That's not the same here necessarily, but the same thing applies. Don't let these men get their senses together and get their thoughts together. Attack them when they're at their most vulnerable and weakest. Don't let them form up. Don't let them get into shield walls or get rams or ladders. Attack them now. And that's what Tyrion is pretty much telling his men. Joffrey complains, reminding Tyrion that Cersei had promised him to command of the trebuchets, aka the whores, and Tyrion notices that Joffrey's visors open again. He's not taking this battle seriously. He believes he's invincible, and to be fair to Joffrey, most kids his age would also think this as well. And so I don't blame him that much, albeit he's acting very childish, all the stuff in the middle of a battle, which they are currently on the losing side of at the moment. Tyrion snaps the visor shut and tells him to keep that closed, as his sweet person is precious to us all. To appease him, Tyrion grants Joffrey command of the trebuchets. I think this is more to just get Joffrey out of Tyrion's hair, also show him to the men that he is actively involved in the battle, all that kind of stuff. Joffrey intends to fling the captured antlermen, traitors nailed with antlers, towards Stannis' line as cruel amusement. Now, I will say this as well. It's kind of similar to, again, we're referencing other battles from other things, but Lord of the Rings with Battle of the Pelennor Fields, when you have the Mordor forces, the orcs are basically launching human heads, more or less, into Minas Tirith. It's that fear factor. It's just Joffrey trying to play onto that even more. When you think about the wildfire that's being done and how horrible the battlefield looks right now. Think about if you're a soldier, right? So let's just think you're a soldier in this moment. You're going through this naval battle that's already been traumatic, just going against other boats and seeing men die that way. But then you're seeing the wildfire consume everything around you. Thousands of men have died in the blink of an eye. And now you're landing on the beach. You have intense archer fire being fired upon you. You're not really fully there. You're not, understanding what you need to do next yet. You're trying to recollect your thoughts. And all of a sudden you just see dudes basically being flung at you. Like, it is a intense battle, to say the least. Tyrion tells Joffrey to be quick about it, as we will need the trebuchets throwing stones again soon. Even wildfire does not burn forever. Joffrey leaves cheerful and eager, escorted by Sir Meryn Trant, while Tyrion stops Sir Osmond de Kettleblack. He grips Osmond's wrist and gives a final serious order. Whatever happens, keep him safe and keep him there. This is the last command Osmond will see for the night, and it is very important. Keep Joffrey in the battlefield. If he retreats, if he leaves, the men might completely abandon Tyrion's cause. And Tyrion knows that. And we're going to see that rear its ugly head in the next chapter. As we get into page 633, Sir Osmond Kettleblack agrees to protect Joffrey, smiling as he answers, "As you command." Tyrion reflects bitterly that he's guarding Cersei's son as best he can, and silently hopes that she's protecting Alea in return. A runner rushes up breathless, reporting that Stannis' men have landed hundreds on the tourney grounds and are bringing a battering ram to the King's Gate. This has escalated the battle now. Now it's not Tyrion watching it, seeing as other men are dying. It's getting to their walls now. The real defense of King's Landing begins now. How will Tyrion respond? And we'll see the dire situation. Tyrion curses and hurries off, Podrick Payne waiting with his horses. He rides fast with Pod and Mandon Moore beside him. The River Row is empty as Tyrion had ordered it cleared, so troops can move freely between gates. Another smart thing that Tyrion does. If you're in a battlefield, and especially when you're in a large of a city as King's Landing with multiple different gates that you have to defend, you're going to need to get to places quickly. Your troop movements are extremely important, and so just another smart plan by Tyrion. As they reach the King's Gate, the crash of a battering ram echoes, the groaning gates sounding like the moans of a dying giant. The square is littered with wounded, but also mounted men and sellswords enough to form a counterattack. And this is where Tyrion's already going to be thinking, what's going on here? We still have enough men to try and defend the gate, so why aren't we? Why are we just allowing them to take down our gate? What is happening here? And this is where, in a lot of ways, everything that Tyrion has done is starting to backfire as well. Not only is he making it traumatic and extremely horrible conditions for the opposing forces, think about the way your own forces feel when they have to go meet those forces on the beach. There's still wildfire everywhere. That's doing friendly fire to your own boats, things like that. The battlefield is just in a terrible state. And then also you're having to kill all these men that, yes, you have the upper hand in, but you're still going to be losing men. You're going in intense situations in which you're outnumbered, of course. And that's when you really see that even somebody like the Hound can be made to be afraid and things like that. Tyrion leaps from his horse and orders them to form up to ride out. A dark armored figure steps forward, Sandor Clegane. He's bloodied, scorched, and furious, declaring no. Tyrion tries to tell him to do so, but the Hound rips off his dented helm, blood running down his burned face as he gasps, "Bugger that, and you." And this is such a great moment, because really what we've seen through the Hound throughout book 1 and 2 is that he's had this uneasy loyalty to House Lannister, and we've built up his background to this point of understanding who he is as a person and the things that he fears. We've seen that predominantly through Sansa's point of view. And the Hound is at this point where he's not willing to face his fears. He's seeing enough that would make any man have PTSD for the rest of their life. He's not willing to do it. And he's not willing to follow the commands of the Lannisters, who also treat him like garbage for the most part. And he steps up for himself for really this big payoff the first 2 books have been leading up to. A sellsword beside him protests, saying they've gone out 3 times already, losing half of their men, surrounded by wildfire, burning horses, and screaming men. And Tyrion doesn't help the situation. He straight up mocks them, saying, "Do you think we hired you to fight an attorney, or shall I fetch you some iced milk and raspberries?" And Tyrion's obviously making fun of them, saying, like, this is war. Of course this is what's going to happen. But it's one thing when you have men, and yes, they're hired to go into battle, but what they're experiencing is nothing they could have even ever imagined. You think about most of these sellswords, maybe you've never been in an actual battle before. It's so different than what Tyrion is expecting these men to do. And so he's going to have to really take over. He orders them back into the fight once again, but Tyrion realizes with shock that the Hound is afraid. And Sandor is afraid for a good reason. You think about his past with his brother and what fire has done to his life and changed him as an individual. You think about the horrors that he's experiencing. You can totally understand why he might be afraid. But Tyrion tries a different tactic with the Hound. He's tried, ordering him around. He's tried using power. He's tried all this other stuff. But now he's going to try to reason with the Hound. He says the enemy has a ram at the gate, and they must ride out to scatter them before the gate breaks, and presumably the city falls. As we get into page 634, this doesn't sway the Hound at all. There's nothing now that can sway the Hound to keep fighting. Sandor tries to order the gate open and tells the men to surround and kill those who rush in. But this is not a good plan either, given the fact is once you open the gate, who's to say that you're ever going to be able to kill all of them and keep the gate under control? He plants his sword in the ground, swaying, and declares he's lost half his men and won't lead more into the wildfire. At this, Sir Moore tries to step up for Tyrion, which is ironic given where this battle is going to go, but he says that the king's hand commands you. The Hound spits back, "Bugger the king's hand." He demands wine, spits it out, and then asks for real wine instead of water. Tyrion sees Clegane is exhausted and broken by wounds and fire. His fear is contagious among the men. Tyrion is realizing how dangerous the Hound is right now, because if someone like the Hound is not willing to go out in battle, what does that say for the average man who's maybe not been a soldier that long, or maybe hasn't been trained to use a sword for that long either? The Hound is somebody that's trained at this his entire life. He's a brutal fighter. He is one of the best in Westeros. He's not willing to go out. So what is that going to then spread to the other men? That's what Tyrion is realizing. Tyrion realizes they need a leader and decides to lead the sortie himself rather than face defeat. Tyrion has no other options. There's nothing else that Tyrion can do. If Tyrion backs down, doesn't lead this himself, the gate will fall and the city with it. The Hound laughs at this when told Tyrion will lead, but Tyrion appoints Sir Manon to carry the king's banner and asks Pod to fetch his helm. Pod quickly obeys and helps Tyrion mount as the Hound watches with wide, white eyes, because the Hound is looking at Tyrion going, okay, maybe there is some newfound respect for Tyrion, just in terms of Tyrion's willing to go out and fight, even through all these terrible conditions, all this stuff, just to try and defend the city. And this is what is going to make his journey, especially in A Storm of Swords, so heartbreaking, is because Tyrion is the person that stepped up. He is the person that when there was a brink of defeat, he did what he needed to do, even though that probably would mean his life. That's what makes Storm of Swords' journey for him as a character so great. And it's why I love A Clash of Kings, because it sets up A Storm of Swords perfectly. Tyrion orders the men to form up. Only about 20 respond at first, many looking terrified. Tyrion then tries his last tactic, the one that will work. Tyrion has tried more or less blunt, forcing them to form up. He's tried reasoning with them. Now he's going to taunt them. He's going to play on their pride. Interesting, because Tyrion is also somebody that is quite prideful as well. Tyrion more or less taunts about calling him a half-man. So if he's a half-man, what does that say for everybody else that's not willing to go out there and fight and defend their city? This is the thing that turns the tide. As a knight and a couple of sellswords join, then more men mount. Tyrion's force roughly doubles. The King's Gate trembles under another battering blow while Tyrion readies his patched together command. Tyrion recognizes the leverage. If he fights, the reluctant men must follow or be deemed cowards and less than half of a man. He steels himself to lead the sortie despite the men's fear and the chaos at the gate. Tyrion is really throwing in a Hail Mary. This is a last-ditch attempt to try and save the city. If these men won't follow him, it's already over. As we get into page 635, Tyrion rallies the men. He refuses to shout for Joffrey or Casterly Rock, but he reminds them it's their city and gate Stannis aims for, then challenges them to come with me and kill the son of a bitch. He unsheaths his axe, wheels his stallion, and trots toward the sally port, uncertain but forcing the men to follow. And that's where the chapter ends. So we don't really get into the battle outside of the gates just yet. We'll have to wait another chapter for that. But I'll say this. I think this is a great moment in the book series, especially Tyrion is taking command and having men follow him into battle, something that Tyrion never could have thought even would be feasible. Like, yes, in the Battle of the Green Fork, we saw this foreshadowed as Tyrion had to lead the men of the mountain clans. Now he's having to do it here as well. And I'll say this. I think that this scene in the show was perfectly adapted. I actually think it was even better in the show. It's one of those moments where D&D sometimes, especially with the Tyrion character, they really improve his dialogue. So for instance, also his speech during his trial, I think is way better in the show than it is the book. I think in the show, D&D really expanded on his speech and made it even better. Just kind of building off of the elements of this in the book, where the book, it's, this is your city. Don't let Stannis take it. That's more or less the point of it. The same point is there in the show, but the show expands upon it. It's like Stannis' men are coming to take your women, coming to take your money, your houses. They're coming to destroy your city, sack it. Building on that, I really love the way the show does this scene. It's why the Battle of Blackwater in the show is probably up there as my favorite episode. It's probably there with the Reigns of Castamere and maybe some of the episodes in season 4. So thank you guys all for watching. In the next video, we're going to be doing Sansa 6, A Clash of Kings, another shorter chapter. And I even kind of almost want to push back on the idea that it's a Sansa POV chapter. Like, yes, it has Sansa in the title. It's from her point of view, but I really, upon rereading that chapter, really feels like it's the inspiration for why George made Cersei a point of view. It very much feels like a straight up Cersei point of view chapter. Everything that we talk about with Cersei in A Feast for Crows is very present in that chapter in terms of what motivates her, looking at her internally, especially because she's drunk. So she's kind of just telling more than she usually would. It's a really nice switch of pace chapter, whereas like battle chapters are great, of course. They're highly entertaining. The stakes are at an all-time high, but you do need those chapters of levity to kind of let everything that just happened settle in, to continue to build up the tension for that next battle sequence. So for instance, the Battle of Helm's Deep in the Two Towers movie specifically, it's very different in the book. It does a great job of this, where we have an action set piece that is not there for spectacle. It's there to tell a story. It's to tell, okay, the Uruk-hai have taken this now. They're assaulting the gate. They're attacking the wall blows up, or the gate it finally gets taken down. Everything has a reason for why it's there. And the same is here with the Battle of Blackwater in the book especially. But it's not just like an hour straight of the Helm's Deep battle. It's, okay, we'll see a little bit of Helm's Deep. We'll see maybe a little bit of Frodo and Sam at Osgiliath. We'll see a little bit of Merry and Pippin trying to get the Ents to go to Isengard. That is so present in the Two Towers, and what makes that final half of that movie so great is because the battle is important, but it also has moments where you're able to think about what just happened. So when we're with Merry and Pippin, yes, it is to slow the pace down a little bit because we've been seeing battle for so long, but it's also for you to think about what's just happened. What's going to happen to Rohan now that the gate's fallen, now that the wall has exploded more or less, like what's going to happen? And George does it really perfectly with how he structures the Battle of the Blackwater. It's why it's one of my favorite stretches of any book of all time. So thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.